Peter Parker Intern to Bruce Banner by 107th Infantry. Chapter 35. An Absolute Idiot. "What do you think I should get Dr. Banner as a thank you present?" Peter asked Aunt May as she made them dinner. She'd grown up used to his stories about his internship over the summer. "Maybe something from those books he likes, or some art for his lab. You've told me there's not many decorations in there. What did Natasha think about those knives?" "I think she liked them. She told me they were pretty." Peter grabbed his laptop to sit on a couch and browse GIF ideas with. It had to be something personal, but not big enough to make Dr. B uncomfortable. It was a shame that not everyone advertised their interests like Nat. Dr. B liked books, specifically old paperbacks. He liked puns and jokes too. He listened to classical music and pop together on shuffle, which amused Peter to no end. He despised that little rotary phone despite using it every day, because it was the only thing that worked in his very secure lab. That was it. "May, I'm going to build him a cell phone, one that can plug into the wall or work outside. It will be great." Aunt May laughed. MJ still complained that he hadn't added enough features to the computer he'd given her. Mainly she lamented the fact that it didn't have an off button. It could process more data than all the school computers combined, but you had to pop out the battery to turn it off. "Stop laughing, I'll double check it has everything this time," Peter said as he took his bowl of pasta and ran to his room. Aunt May knew better than to try to get him to eat with her when he was this excited. The next few nights he holed up in his room working on it. Ned brought over a few broken phones and MJ wrote several paragraphs of feedback about her computer. Shuri even took a look at it on FaceTime under the promise of complete secrecy. She reminded Peter that it needed a charging port. When he went to Stark Tower the Thursday before school started, he brought the phone with him. He didn't want to forget it Friday, so he stuck it in his desk. 30 minutes into the day, he got an email from Mr. Stark. "Kid, do you have time to chat? If so, come to my lab. Tony." "Dr. B, Mr. Stark wants to chat. Do you need me for the next hour?" "Nah, just be back in time for lunch." Peter took the elevator up, and no one else was there. Odd. He stepped out onto the top floor. Tony Stark sat on a couch and pointed for Peter to sit opposite him. Peter didn't need a spidey sense to see a talk coming. He braces himself for a telling off. He readied himself to defend an action he'd forgotten he'd taken, or a word he'd forgotten he'd said. "Peter, I'm an absolute idiot sometimes." Tony Stark was sitting in front of him, admitting he was an idiot. No, not Tony Stark. Mr. Stark. Tony. Tony was admitting he was wrong. What for? "Yes," Peter agreed. "There's no excuse. You're a good kid. Bruce has never done anything like this, and Lord knows he's traumatised too. I hacked into the computers in Lab B to look at what happened to you after the bite. I'm sorry, there's no excuse." How dare he? Boundaries had been set. Peter calmed himself. "Why?" "I wanted to know if you were smart before the bite. I wanted to know, and I didn't stop myself because I let myself be selfish and egotistical. No need to say anything, I just wanted you to know." "At least you told me," Peter conceded. He looked shaken, but Tony looked even more so. "I'm telling Bruce and Nat. I'm sure they'll yell at you a bit, but thanks for telling me." "When did you do it?" "The day you came into the meeting." Tony looked sick. "When did you hack in?" "The day I came down to the lab." "Fine. I'll see you later, Mr. Stark." Peter got up to leave. "You don't have to. You can stay and have everything you have with Bruce and Nat, and even Pepper, and never see me again if you want." "I'll think about it." With that, Peter stepped onto the elevator and went down. Tony had betrayed him. Tony had admitted to it. But this was the second time it had happened. Still, it wasn't likely to happen again. The elevator ride was long and silent, filled with Peter's thoughts. Both Nat and Dr. Banner were sitting in the lab when Peter walked in. Natasha looked up and sensed something was wrong. "What's up, Peter?" "Mr. Stark hacked my computer to read about my transformation a few weeks ago, and just now told me," Peter said as he slumped into a chair. Bruce was sitting next to him in an instant. He looked upset. Nat calmly. I could use my new knife set, she suggested. Natasha, Bruce exclaimed. I'm just saying it's an option. This got a tiny smile from Peter. What do you want to do, Peter? I want to get some ice cream and sit on the roof. He didn't look horrible, but he didn't look good either. Done, Natasha said. She grabbed some pillows and blankets. When Bruce continued to sit, she yanked him up and gently pushed him to the doorway. Friday, clear the old Avengers outdoor patio and get someone to leave ice cream on it, Natasha instructed the AI in the elevator. How are you, Peter? Dr. B finally asked. I've been better. I've been worse. He said I didn't have to change anything if I didn't want to see him again. But I like Mr. Stark. He does care. Well, you don't have to think about that now if you don't want to, interjected Nat. She led the two of them up to the balcony and set up the pillows on an old outdoor couch. Several gallons of ice cream sat beside it. It truly was a pretty day. Even so high up, the air was a breezy sort of warm. This is where I sat until I was ready to think about things. It worked for me. A while later, Peter spoke. He was halfway through his gallon of ice cream. How do I start? What do you want? I want to be Spider-Man, Peter started. I want to be a scientist. I want to be friends with Mrs. Stark, but I want to be respected. He looked back at Natasha. She nodded. He looked at Bruce. He smiled reassuringly. I want to learn to fight. I want to learn how to write better. I want to keep my friends safe. I want Aunt May to be happy. I want to keep my identity a secret until I'm ready. It's all right, Peter, said Bruce. Natasha gestured for Bruce not to intervene. I want to feel normal. Peter was crying now. His intelligence was always the normal part about him. How many people thought it was enhanced like Mr. Stark did? I want to be treated like I'm normal. How are you going to do that? Bruce asked kindly. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to ask Mr. Harrington not to mention the internship. I'm going to train with Natasha and go be Spider-Man when I want to. I'll work with you on lab stuff, and if I feel like saying hi to Mr. Stark, I will. Good, said Natasha. She looked at the tired boy. I'm driving you home. You'll come back tomorrow for your last day. Okay. Peter felt like his limbs were trying to drag him down. They were sore from training, and he was just so emotionally drained. Bruce picked up Peter, despite knowing Nat could do it. I'm coming too. They were an odd trio, but since Friday respectfully overrode the elevator, no one saw. They put him in bed and explained to Aunt May as he slept. Peter's tears stained the pillow again, but there were fewer of them this time. Natasha was no longer outside the window, she was in his apartment. Bruce wasn't miles away, he was there too. Tony wasn't waiting to apologise, he already had. It was the same, and yet so very different. Chapter 36. The End. Or not. Peter felt solidly okay on Friday. He got up and dressed as always. He went to the tower and took the elevator up to the intern floor. The elevator was empty. Normalcy unless he sought something else out. Good. The office was decorated with going away banners. Hugs were given and received. Even Mrs. Andrews seemed misty-eyed. You'll stay in touch until next year, all right? She said to the youngest group. Everyone else does. I'll even set you up with a tour for your family if you're ever back in town during the school year. You got it, Mrs. Andrews, said Kyle. Everyone else nodded. Phone numbers were exchanged, and everyone headed for their final day of work. Dr. B, what are we working on? Peter shouted, just like every other day. Just some straightening up and messing with on dark matter, said Bruce. He climbed down from one of the larger machines. Very funny. Fine, just straightening up, but we will be moving matter as we straighten up. Peter started making stacks of paper by subject matter. You doing all right? Bruce asked. Yeah. They worked with some music in the background. It was soft for Peter's hearing and classical for Bruce's tastes. Peter finished picking up papers and started dusting. Bruce used a small vacuum and barely looked up when Peter climbed on the ceiling to dust a few of the taller machines. Around noon they ate takeout and debated whether antimatter was even real. Neither really chose a side, but they debated anyway. "I've got something for you," Peter said when they decided the data was too vague to tell. "It's a present." He opened the drawer where his Frankenstein cell phone sat. It has texting and calling, and most importantly, it can hook up to the one phone line you have here. It was silver, with a little engraving on the back. "Return to Dr. Bruce Banner." "Thank you, Peter." Bruce held it gingerly, like it might break, but the phone was actually quite sturdy. It was reinforced and had a keyboard that slid out from behind it like an old flip phone. "You're welcome, Dr. B." Peter picked up their takeout containers as Bruce plugged in the phone where the old rotary had been. "Is this just a trick to avoid learning how to use my old phone?" Bruce joked. "Absolutely." "Well, at least I got something out of it. Really, Peter, thank you. I'm going to miss having you around." "I'll still come by after school a few days a week." "Well, even if you somehow get too busy, make sure to text Nat and I with updates." "Duh. Now, let's finish up cleaning before I have to go home." Peter and Bruce had the lab spotless by 2 p.m. Through their combined efforts, the room was cleaner than it had been in years. Books were stacked on end, tables and tools lay out on workbenches, but overall, the place actually looked organised. "Don't ruin it over the weekend," Peter shouted as he left. "Wouldn't dream of it," said Bruce as he set a third mug of tea on his desk. When Peter got home, he breathed in the comforting smell of clean laundry of his home. He'd had a good summer. It hadn't been what he'd expected, but he had Bruce and Nat and Shuri and maybe even Tony now if he decided he wanted that. When he walked into his room, he saw something on his bed. It was a new spider suit with a note attached. Blue and red fabric was bundled up in neat package. "Sorry about everything. You're always welcome in my lab. Tony." Peter tucked it under his bed. That could wait for another day. He went over to his desk to set his bag down. He opened his computer. Oh shit! He had summer homework. 2 days until school started and he hadn't even looked at it. 3 hours into a desperate attempt to finish his homework before the weekend, he got a text. "Dr. B. I figured out how to text. Praise me, young one. Nat. I had to teach him. LOL, LMAO. Peter. I am so sending a screenshot of this to Shuri. You're both elderly. Nat. Just wait until you meet Cap. He's a true old man. Peter. What? I've met him as Spider-Man, thank you very much. Nat. Well, you'll be meeting him as Peter soon enough. Everyone's moving into the tower for the Accords. Cap, Bucky, Ant-Man, Vision and Wanda will live on site. Clint and everyone else will be there part-time. Peter. Dude, since when? Nat. Like an hour ago? There was a press release. What planet have you been on? Peter. I've been doing my summer homework. Dr. B. Peter. Peter. I know, I'm sorry. Nat. He can do his homework easy. I'm just worried about the whole secret identity thing. We can talk about it at training next week. Peter. I'm great with my secret identity. Dr. B. The vent incident? That time you ate a whole pizza in front of the interns? You not taking a single sick day the entire summer? Peter. I'm a healthy growing kid who has an awesome spy friend who helped me go through vents. Nat. Sure. Go finish your homework. We love you, kid. They love him. Peter thought he knew, but it was written down now. Peter was loved. He spun around in his desk chair before getting back to work. What a good summer. Thank you so much for listening. This is the end of this fic. I really hope you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed reading it. Have a lovely day.